Hi, Jean.
Hi.
How's your week been going?
Oh, it's better than last week.
Yeah?
Last week was pretty delicious.
You want to tell me about it?
Well, I had some real breakthroughs, I think.
You did. Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of it is just things coming together as a head, and then I did an EMDR session,
Uh-huh.
and so it'd be this coming Friday would be 2 Fridays ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really strange because it was I kind of imagined like this energy wall,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was trapped behind it.
Kind of like that blanket that you were talking about before,
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think with the DMPR kind of helped to kind of break through with it, and
Nice.
then a lot of stuff started, coming up, and then I got my results back for a paper I did,
Okay.
and it wasn't good.
It wasn't good?
It wasn't good.
Mm.
I actually felt I had tried harder, that that I put a lot of effort into it, a lot of consideration. She said to tackle the hardest thing you could think of.
Right.
And then afterwards, I'm like, now I feel like I was set up.
Really?
I mean, that's the feeling I got.
Right.
Okay, take the
Right.
hardest thing you can do. Not, oh, okay, well, yeah, see, you're struggling, so why don't you try picking something that's easy? Write about that. Get some confidence built up.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's like go for the jugular, and
Mhm.
well, I went for the jugular, and I got slapped down big time.
You think she was trying to challenge you, or do you think she was trying to set you up? Because you mentioned set up.
I think both, maybe. I think challenge, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I can't read her motivation. I'm just
True.
saying it felt like
Right.
I was set up.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that was her intent. Her
Right.
intent very well could have been to challenge.
Challenge you.
And I can see that. I can see that.
But it didn't take away your experience. That feeling that you got when you looked at the grade and what that felt like for you.
Right, and until we sit down and I really hear what her perspective is.
Sure.
I can't really, make that judgment one way or the other.
That's true. That's true.
And it was really interesting too, because then so one of the professors was evaluating the class that day.
Mm-hmm.
A different professor was in there, and I'm in the back of the room, and there's this, she has this vignette up, and I'd asked her about, do you get these in PowerPoints or in wrap? She said no.
Mm.
And so I'm like, for me, I would have felt humiliated to have. It felt like I would be begging to ask her, hey, I can't really see. I need to get this in large print. For me, because so much of my life I spent denying my disability and my visual impairment. And in fact, there's times I've caught myself saying, oh, you're just faking it. That's how much denial.
To yourself?
Yes.
Wow.
And so here I am. So with the EMDR, I think I was more aware that that as I'm, have my phone and I'm trying to look and trying to see, and there's glare and lights on it, that I could just physically feel the pain in my eyes of trying to struggle to see and and just realize that I had real physical pain there.
Yeah.
And then there's also frustration, anger, helplessness, that all comes along with that. And I also realized too that I think the instructor is, because I found myself, this is why I'm linking it, I found myself just crying out on the inside, no matter what I do, I can't please her. And I think back as a kid having this instructor for 4 years in the special ed program, and where would be yelled at, screamed at, humiliated.
So this is just bringing all that old garbage back up.
Yeah.
And now here you are as a grown man, but you're feeling like that little boy there who was really treated not
Yeah.
well.
I even minimized that experience, that I thought, oh, well, she wasn't really that bad, I'm the problem. In high school, it was another instructor that was in the visual education field said that she had made other kids cry. So it wasn't me specifically, that was her personality. And so it was like, okay, well, this instructor is just fitting that same personality type.
Right.
That it just, and now, 47 years later, I look back and I see how I struggled. So here I am in a visual education class as a kid, right? And the number line she's trying to have me work on, it's small print.
Wow.
It's small print. It wasn't enlarged. It was just small, and I'm like, I'm so out of touch with that kid. I'm so out of touch with me because of just denying, anger, just pushing it down, not dealing with it.
Yeah.
So then after class last Tuesday, I met with 3 other members of my cohort.
Okay. For what?
For one of my classes.
Okay.
Yeah. And for a project that we're working on. And one of them pops off, and because now, mind you, I'm the white male with 3 Hispanic females, all right? And then one of them says, well, I don't want to deal with the culture issue. And I'm like, well, that's what I tackled in my paper, and I got slapped down for it. And I'm like, I told him what my grade was, and I'm like, I got 17.5 out of 25. And I'm like, I ain't doing it.
Right.
And then I broke down in tears, and which I think is pretty significant progress. That to be able to even allow myself to feel those feelings, which normally I would push down.
Yeah.
And and I says, I go, look, I was in a class last year, a Christianity class, and a 7-year-old African American man came in, and he talked about his experience of internalizing, with all their discrimination and stuff, internalizing and feeling like he is not good enough every day.
And you've mentioned that before too. Did you really relate to his struggle?
I thought I had.
Yeah.
I thought I had, and I shared that with him.
Okay.
I shared that experience, and I says, no, look, on a racial level, I can't relate. On that feeling level of not good enough,
Right.
I feel that every day.
Right.
Okay.
It could be for different reasons, but it's the same feeling, right?
Exactly. Mine is for my visual impairment, that I'm not good enough.
Right.
Okay. And so I felt connected to him as a human being.
Yes.
I can relate to his experience on a internal level,
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
And so it's and one of the three expressed, that it must be really hard, really must be difficult. Mind you, we're all supposed to be training to be therapists,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And only one of them says anything.
Mm-hmm.
A week goes by, no one says anything.
Mm.
We meet again, no one says, how you doing? No compassion, no empathy,
Right.
no outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, my God, what's going on? What are they thinking? And then one of them, afterwards I was talking with, and they says, well, I think the instructors see that you're really, that you're for equality.
Okay.
All right. But what the instructors want you to see is the skin color and culture.
One of them told you that, one of your cohorts?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow, okay. Interesting.
And I'm like, and what was really interesting about that experience, because this was Monday. So I was gonna give her a lift across the street, and we ran into the janitor that works one of the janitors that works in the SRC,
Mm-hmm.
which I know and I've talked with, and she knows. Well, then they started lapsing into Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, how am I supposed to feel?
Right, left
I
out.
can,
Yeah.
I can see,
Yeah.
I can see the joy for them to be communicating in their culture.
Or their language, whatever.
Or their language.
Natural language, whatever, yeah.
And then I'm like,
But,
what should I be feeling? Or what, I mean, should I feel left out? Should I feel like,
right,
well, I mean, I don't know what to feel. What's an acceptable feeling to feel?
but I-
Rather than just saying, I feel this way,
right,
I'm trying to accommodate myself to them rather than honoring myself. And so in my culture, and to frame it in their this vernacular,
Mhm.
I look at what my expectations are, and you know what always really touched me was that we'd go over to my sister's in-laws,
Okay.
and they're Hispanic, and when Frank Sr. would lapse into Spanish, his wife Helen would get onto him, and I thought that is so thoughtful, so
Right.
considerate.
Right,
And so when in a situation like that, have they even thought about it? Do they even care?
Hmm.
Does it matter to them
Mm-hmm.
that I feel included?
Right,
Or am I just a fly on the wall?
yeah, you question if they're even aware, you know what I mean?
Right.
You wanna,
And I wonder, since the suicide rates, that it is like 78% white males,
mm-hmm.
what's being taught in the cohort that they're all about cultural sensitivity and stuff, and my feeling my reaction to that has been I phrased it inadequately in my paper. I felt that it felt like the state being a parent and trying to tell me what to do. But what I've discovered is the real feeling behind that is that I'm so cynical because of the hypocrisy that I see.
Mm-hmm.
That there's an expectation, a one-sided expectation
Mm-hmm.
in the teaching.
Okay.
So two professors that I've talked at length with, one in the program and one in the lower grade,
Mm-hmm.
extensively about, you know, the term white privilege and bringing that up. And in the end, you know, just recently in talking with her, is like, one of them, it was like, okay, well, where does bias come from? And she goes, well, thought.
Yeah.
Then why are you taking a person's identity or skin color
Right.
and ascribing skin color to thought?
Right.
Is that not racism?
I think you talked about that before, something about your character instead of, but saying skin color and equalizing that to character, whereas character is different. And
Yeah.
to judge upon the character rather than just, well, you're a one skin color, so that makes you XYZ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that before,
Yeah.
same kind of thing.
So, you know, so then, like, last Wednesday, I couldn't, I was supposed to come and meet with the professor and two of the other, a different professor, you know. Because this particular professor I haven't really discussed. She's talked about her white privilege and education, that's white privilege, and to finish my thought on that.
Oh, sorry.
So that the idea that those two other instructors felt that they both felt, or they both had the position that you didn't care about other cultures, they didn't care about ours. And I'm like, if you look in the terms of white privilege, if you look at other cultures, other races, you go to China, you know, India, where there's no, say, white people around really.
Right.
Okay, and you look at the hierarchy, the structure, you're gonna have people in places of privilege and power.
Right.
Okay, and you look at it from a human perspective and a behavioral perspective. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to open themselves and look at it as a human experience. They want to
Gotcha.
stay in the white privilege culture. And then I told another therapist about that, and you know, she goes, you know, that's their white privilege.
Oh, to be able to do that?
To be able to do that. Okay, and so, so I'm jumping around, so forgive me for that. So that Wednesday, I mean, I there was just no way that I could have kept it together.
You weren't emotionally ready for that meeting.
No, I mean, I couldn't even go to class, and
Oh, goodness.
and so Thursday I go to class, and you know, I'm there like right at the last minute before it starts, and then she hands out, comes over and hands out a paper, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody talked about must have said something to her, and I'm gonna have this vignette in large print. That was my expectation.
Okay.
And so she asked me what I call that 5 o'clock suicide question.
What's that?
You know, you know, the session's about over, and you know, the client's maybe showing some suicidality, and so you ask the question, you don't want to complete suicide, do you? So they're fishing for that question.
Okay.
You know, of what they want. They want to know.
Uh-huh.
You know, so that's what it's called, the 5 o'clock suicide
Oh,
question.
I never heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that, you know, as a therapist, you don't want to say to somebody.
Right.
Okay. And so she hands me the paper and says, oh, I didn't enlarge it. You got your magnifier thing that you can see it, right? So then, being a people pleaser, I felt I had to make her feel better and not really express all the stuff that I was feeling. And so, you know,
And what were you feeling at that moment? What did that feel like?
Well, at that moment, it was like I was reverting to all my old coping skills of denial and suppression and, you know, trying to please that teacher. trying to please her, you know. I mean, how would it have gone down to say, you know, no, this is really disrespectful. You know, that the hypocrisy is, she talked about how you have to put yourself in another person's shoes,
Right.
even if you disagree with them,
Right,
okay, to see and be impassioned.
right.
Well, she talks about it, and in practice, that doesn't happen.
You
Not in
don't
the
feel
classroom.
that towards you
Oh,
anyway.
zero. I mean, none of my professors have really sat down and asked me, what is your experience like as a person with a disability?
That'd be an interesting question to ask. I think more importantly, has anybody sat down and said, what do you need as someone in your situation? What can I do for you to make this classroom experience more,
No,
whatever?
no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Now, there's one professor that I had in the computer science department at
Mhm.
White Mill, ironically enough, that there was an occasion he may have forgotten something in large print, a handout or examiner,
Okay.
and he would say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry," and leave the classroom.
Interesting.
Go print it out
Yeah.
and come back.
Yeah.
Now, tell me.
So he made adjustments for you.
He was sensitive to me.
Yes. Okay.
He was thoughtful of me.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and does that happen in the counseling area?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Mm.
not really. Not really. So I think you can really see where my cynicism and my sense of hypocrisy comes when I hear about this other
Right.
stuff.
Right. Right.
And, you know,
Well, on one hand, it gives you a lot of firsthand experience about what other people might be going through as far as their cultural identity and whatever, because you know it from a different angle, possibly. So you could probably relate with somebody, you know, on that level, more so than probably someone who doesn't have a disability or, you know, a color barrier or language barrier or whatever. You know, you could probably be more sensitive.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think so. Now, it's amazing that I went to SOS meeting last night,
Wow.
which is the survivors of suicide.
Okay.
Because of my sister
Right,
completing suicide,
right.
that I've gotten involved in the organization and the SALT, and then this is a separate group that's
Mhm.
run by Kern County Behavioral Services.
Okay.
And, you know, she basically is kind of group therapy.
Uh-huh.
And everybody goes around and talks about their struggle there, and I was kind of feeling that you know, like, okay, I kind of scabbed over, you know. And so by the time it got around to me, you know, just hearing other people's stories,
Yeah.
just hearing this one guy's story, he's 19, homeless, and his twin brother and him were raised in a very abusive home, and he talked about how his anger, he held it inside and then explode, and his brother would go cry, and how he'd been in juvie, and then he had some home visits, and on a home visit, as he was leaving, his brother came out, walked down the street, shot himself in the head, and so now he's 19 and homeless, and it's like, yeah. And then when it came to tell my story about what's been going on with the feelings of oppression and discrimination, and stuff, that broke down. I mean, it was very healing for me to be able to just, as I was telling the story, to cry. And
Yeah.
I find it interesting that telling you my story, I'm not displaying the emotional affect, which it's really interesting to myself, because I'm like, why am I not bawling my tears out?
Right. Because you still feel that pressure, and like you said oppression, and it seems like a burden to have to carry that, and
Yeah.
yeah.
A lot of shame, humiliation.
Yeah, humiliation. I can't, I'm just gonna be honest, I can't be in your shoes, and I'm thankful that you're able to share with me these things, because it's interesting, and I think it's helpful for me to always be aware of what I'm so unaware of, you know? But I wanted to ask, what could make things better for you? Like if you woke up tomorrow and everything was like the right way, like what would that look like for you?
That I would be showing the same respect that other people are expecting me to show for them, for their cultures, for their beliefs, or that, whatever,
So someone would be giving you equal amounts of respect that are expected, equal amounts of compassion
Mm-hmm.
that you express for others.
Mm-hmm.
There would be some reciprocation.
Right. And I realize at the institution I am, that's not gonna happen. I think that's a very unrealistic expectation on my part. And it's not my job to change. As is pointed out to me, that not to give the power to this instructor to quit the program.
Right.
And that, as my sister put it, just learn what you're teaching and just go on. And so I guess being vulnerable and open and honest is not what it takes to succeed in this program. That's my lesson. Because what happens is there's ego conflicts with people who have also very strongly held beliefs, like I do.
Sure.
Just not necessarily the same ones.
Right.
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 And so I don't know. And again, it all depends on how how the meeting goes down. Just hearing other people in the group, the SOS group, just to hear my story they were upset and angry, and that one of them called it bullying, if anything.
Interesting.
I mean, if you think about it, so what the teacher said, if I was a person, here's another thing, a person of color. So I'm not a person of color, I'm transparent, and so you don't even see me. Because I am not color, I don't have any color, so I'm transparent, right? So you gotta love that phrase, and it's like, I think about that. I feel that very much so I've experienced microaggressions. However, microaggressions are only defined as a one-way street, that it's a white male, say, or perpetrating it upon a person of color or minority or whatever term you want to use. Yet when the other thing happens, it's acceptable. It's okay. It's normal. I had years ago, there was this guy across, I don't know if I'm repeating myself, security guard. He was Hispanic, and he was telling me how much better he was than me because he could speak 2 languages. okay, at a bus stop when this was in the 90s and Black and Hispanic kids were coming out, and this educator with the tie comes on, and Hispanic male, and I stopped and I asked him, well, what's going on? And this guy was literally seething with anger and resentment that he was teaching. He was modeling that to those kids, okay? And he stereotyped me. He said, well, these kids don't have two parents and, educate, to put them through school and blah, 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 and all this. And I'm like, excuse me, I'm a single parent. My mother barely makes it. I'm taking the bus.
Right. Plus you have a disability,
Yeah.
which would not have known that.
Right.
But assume that you're.
Assume that
Right.
I'm
A lot of
privileged,
assumptions.
right? I don't.
Well, I think for you, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think for you, you just want to be heard and listened to. So there's a difference between being heard and being listened to, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
Yeah.
So I think you need a little bit of both. And my hope is that when you have that meeting, that you get those. No, it doesn't mean that people have to agree, and you understand that.
Yeah.
But if somebody can just hear you, and you know that you've been listened to, I think that will go a long way to help your frustration that you're feeling even now, because maybe people are like me, unaware.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if you could bring them to some kind of awareness that can, you can give them a chance to adapt. And you'll know that because of the behavior that happens after. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I think that would go so much farther, even for your state of mind.
Yeah.
If one person could just say, hey, I see you, and I see your struggle, and you know what I'm gonna do for that? I'm gonna help you out. What do you need?
That would be nice.
Right?
That would be nice to hear,
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
So-
isn't that supposed to be what a good therapist is?
Well, but we're talking about professors and that they're not your therapists, so.
They're not my therapists, but aren't they supposed to be modeling? Or not? And maybe that's where my expectations
Right.
have gotten me into
Right,
trouble.
Right,
Is that I'm expecting them,
right,
they're teaching the material.
right.
They're not my therapists, they're teaching me therapeutic material. And if they're not modeling that, what
But
is that?
again, but those are your expectations,
Yeah.
but listen to this. A closed mouth does not get fed.